Hi, this is Luke from Mathematic, and in this video I'm going to show you how to crush the AP Statistics free response section. So I'm going to give you 4 very specific strategies that will help you maximize your score on the free response. Strategy number 1 is to know what to expect. So based on the AP exams over the years, we have a pretty good idea of the types of questions that you can expect to see. And here's a short list, but let me go into detail here. The first one variable statistics. Most often, the question will ask you to either describe a distribution or to compare two distributions. So make sure in that particular question that you are addressing the shape of the distribution, any potential outliers, the center of the distribution, as well as the spread of the distribution, and make sure that you do that in the context of the problem. So we use the acronym SOX plus context to remember how to handle that particular question. Next type of question that you might see is 2 variable statistics. And most often in those questions, they will ask you to describe the relationship between the 2 variables. So for this one, in your response, you're going to want to make sure that you address the direction of the relationship, any potential outliers, the form of the relationship, and the strength of the relationship. And once again, you're going to want to make sure that you include the context of the variables there. Next up, you might see a question that's dealing with different sampling methods or possibly setting up an experiment. Be sure that you clearly communicate your understanding on a question that deals with sampling methods and experimental design. Next up, we almost always have a question that's dedicated entirely to probability. And usually this question is going to have 3 parts, part A, part B, and part C. And there's a variety of different questions that can be asked, but ones you want to be aware of are binomial distribution calculations, normal distribution calculations, as well as your more traditional probability questions, which would ask you to use probability rules in order to answer a question. One of the best strategies for handling these more traditional probability questions can be using a tree diagram. Next up, here's one that you can be almost sure will be on the AP exam, and that's a question that asks you to perform a significance test. So if you're wondering which type of test do you want to use, we have another video that should help you out with that. But to give you an idea of what we've seen in the years past, take a look at this list. The last question that we know 100% for sure will be on the AP Statistics exam is question number 6, the investigative task, which is going to be the focus of strategy number 2. To survive the investigative task. The investigative task will always be question number 6 on the free response, and it is definitely written to be a challenging question, which means that you don't have to get a 4 out of 4 in order to do well on this one. But if you can get a 1 or a 2 or better, you're going to be doing well. So we say that you need to survive the investigative task. So here's what you need to know. It is worth 25% of the free response grade, which means you're probably going to want to spend a little bit more time on this particular question than the others. The AP exam suggests 25 minutes. Now the other thing that you need to know is that because it's an investigative task, they are going to take you into some content that you did not cover in your AP statistics class. But using the thinking and reasoning that you've developed throughout the year, you should be able to be successful on the investigative part of the task. Generally, the investigative task is going to have 4 or 5 parts, A, B, C, D, and E. And the way that that typically works is that parts A and B will be something that's very familiar to you. And that's where you want to make sure you pick up your points, is in the first couple of parts. But then, at some point in the question, usually part C or part D, they're going to take you into a new world of content that you did not see in your AP statistics class. So make sure that you don't freak out because you're looking at something that you haven't seen before. You know what to expect. It's an investigative task. There's going to be something on there that you haven't seen in your coursework. The next important idea to know is that the parts are scaffolded. So the first couple of questions are generally going to lead into the next questions. So by the time you get to the end of the question, part E, which is usually the real investigative part of it, you're going to want to take a look back at what you've written so far in the first few parts and try and summarize that in that last question that they're giving you. Strategy number 3 is to make sure that you have a plan to attack the free response questions. So first thing you need to know is that you have 90 minutes overall to complete 6 questions. And while that may sound like a lot of time, if you are clearly communicating your understanding on each of the 6 questions, it is likely that you will use the entirety of the 90 minutes. So I know I said earlier on the investigative task, you should plan to spend about 25 minutes, which is going to leave you with about 65 minutes for the other 5 questions. So on average, you're going to be spending about 13 minutes for each one of those questions, 1 through 5. My next suggestion here is to make sure that you take a practice test and be sure that during that practice test you are timing the free response. Give yourself 90 minutes, take the practice test, and see where you end up at the end of 90 minutes. Now this is going to help you when you get to the last idea here, which is what approach are you going to take on the AP exam. So I'm going to give you 2 possible suggestions, and this is going to be based entirely on you and yourself and based on how you did on the practice test. If the 90 minutes was entirely enough time for you, my suggestion is to go straight through 1 through 6. On the other hand, if you found that you were running out of time and that 90 minutes was not quite enough time for you, I do have a suggestion for which questions you should do first. My suggestion is to start on question number 1. Number 1 is typically the easiest question on the free response. It's also a good confidence builder to start out the free response. My next suggestion is to find the significance test, which typically will be question number 4, question number 5, and make sure you do that significance test, and hopefully you can get your 4 points on that one. Next after that is to go after the investigative task. You don't want to miss the investigative task because it is worth 25% of the free response grade. After that, I say find the probability question because that question typically will go very quickly, much more quickly than the others. And then finally, take a look at whatever questions you have left and start with the ones that you know best and end with the ones that are most challenging for you. And here's our final strategy for doing well on the AP Statistics free response section. Get all of your points. So first thing here is make sure that you don't leave anything blank. You can get partial credit for showing partial understanding, so try and make sure anything that you know ends up on that piece of paper. Now, if you get to a question that you really have no idea, but you realize that you're going to need the answer from that question in order to do the next part, we suggest that you simply make up an answer. Just make sure that the answer that you make up is a reasonable answer. For example, if it's a probability question, make sure that your answer is between 0 and 1. And then finally, on the free response, make sure that you include context every opportunity that you have when you're explaining your thinking and reasoning. So let's recap all 4 strategies here. Strategy number 1, know what to expect. Strategy number 2, survive the investigative task. Strategy number 3, have a plan. Strategy number 4, get all your points. So we hope these suggestions have been helpful for you, and good luck on the AP Statistics exam.